Right. So what we have created in the last session about, so we have created user stories for all the epics. As you know, first of all, epic creation is what we have to do. So for every epic, there are some user stories which we have written. Now, whatever the user stories we have written so far, all these things will be placed in the backlog. So this is where generally backlog comes into picture. So that whatever the user stories are we writing, everything can be placed in the backlog here. Now, in reference to this backlog itself, what is that you can see here in this backlog? So there are different user stories we have written for the functionalities which we want to develop. Now, here development team has to understand how to develop this. Because for example, if I am a developer, if I want to develop this user story, nothing but this functionality and all, I need to understand the complexity. Because if there is no complexity, if I understand, how can I develop that? Because how much time it will be taken, right? So when this can be completed, even though it has a different priority, because priorities may vary. Sometimes it may be high priority, sometimes it may be an intermediary priority, sometimes it may be a least priority. Irrespective of the priorities, one should know about how and what complexity generally it will be taken. Now, if you want to understand about the complexities of any user story, I'll write down the techniques. If we want to estimate or understand the complexity of the user stories, there are two ways we follow. The first way is dividing this user stories into task, right? So what is task and all, I'll tell you. Okay, dividing user story into task is one way of doing it. Second is that providing story points for the user stories. These are the two different things which normally we follow, right? So providing user stories to the story points. These are the two things, right? So we have to provide story points for the user stories is the second one, wherein dividing the user story into tasks so that estimation, because so that user story complexity can be estimated by the team accordingly. So if you want to estimate this complexity and all everything, so we need to divide this into user stories into task, followed by this either or else we can provide some story points for that. Now, I'll give you a sample to you. I'll show you in a sample so that you'll be understood. So here you can see there is an option of user story. I'll be doing for 2-3 user stories. I'll show you in sample so that you'll be understood why and for what reason it is to be given. Okay. Now, for example, there is a backlog, right? So in this backlog, for example, this is the user story, right? For example. Yeah, so this is the user story. What we can do, this user story, if you want to write any kind of task, for example, as a system user, I want you to create an account so that I can log in accordingly, right? So this is what the user story. Now, for example, being a developer, I felt this user story is so complex. What I can do now, I can divide this user story into task. If you want to write a task, there is an option here called create subtask. Okay, create task or subtask is what you can see. Right, so at the same time we have link pages, all that. So here we have an option called create subtask. Here we need to write that subtask. So what is that? It is creating UI and UX designing. Means for this application, I'm dividing into task and subtask where I'm creating user interface and user experience designing, right? This is one thing, right? So coding, right? So coding for this functionality. This is one more user story, one more task. Okay, subtask. Next, third thing, testing, performing testing. For that, functionality. Next, database designing. Right, so these are the different tasks which we have created for this particular user story. So that what we can do, you can minimize the workload. Means, for example, if that user story is complex for the team to develop, so we can minimize this to the user. We can minimize this to the task. This is one way of doing it. Otherwise, the other way of doing it is providing some story points. This is what I said, right? Story point creation is what we have to do. Now, when you're talking about the story point creation of story points and all everything, right? So if that was the case, what we have to do here is this story point creation, we use poker gaming technique. We use poker gaming technique or t-shirt sizing. T-shirt sizing means L, S, double XL, right? XL, all that stuff. That's how generally the technique is. So that is one way of it. But normally we use very less in percentage. Poker gaming technique is what we use. How this poker gaming technique is, for example, these user stories are there. Okay, this user stories, who has written these user stories? These user stories written by the business analyst or turned product owner has written. Now, what product owner say? Product owner will invite a meeting, will call for a meeting, and he'll explain this particular, each and every user story will be explained to all the members. Whoever is attending for the team, like development team, he'll explain this complexity, how I am looking for, right? So what is that I can see? What is that I want to see? Everything will be explained by the product owner to the what we call the product owner to the product owner to the development team. And product owner will ask development team to provide some story points. Right now, when you want to give some points for every user story, there is a Fibonacci series which normally we use. Fibonacci series. Fibonacci series means 1, 1 plus 1, 2, 2 plus 1, 3, 3 plus 2, 5, 5 plus 3, 8, 8 plus 3, 13, and so on. Right? So this is how generally Fibonacci series is being used for. So this Fibonacci number will be used to mention the user story points for the particular user story. Now here is a question. You can ask Raj, how can you expect that story points will be given by the people, everything is the same, right? For example, if there are 5 people may give a different number, right, every time. So how can we do that? Normally, this poker gaming technique is, this is where generally this poker gaming technique, we use a technique called 3C's technique. 3C's technique is what we follow. So we follow 3C's technique. So this 3C's technique is start, conversation, and confirmation. Card, conversation, and confirmation. This is what generally 3C's technique stands for. So what we do, first of all, card. Card means user story will be written on this card. Okay, user story will be written on this card. So once user story will be written on this card, this will be given to all the attendees. To all the attendees. Now they have to give a number individually. They have to give a number individually. They have to give a number individually. For example, some person has given 1, some person may be giving 3, 5, 8, 13, all that. It is depends on the complexity what they see, because everybody won't see the complexity in the same manner, right? Complexity may be seen by the people, depends on the understanding level what they have and all everything. At the same time, the kind of complexity what they have seen, because everybody see the complexity not in the same manner. These complexities might be varied from one to another. It will not be the same all the time. So the complexities and all everything will be seen by the people in different things, right? This is what it is. So when you're talking about this card, so this card will be given, user story will be written on that. That will be given to all the members, so that all the members has to mention the date number. Now there will be no commonality. So how it will happen? Conversation will happen, right? So there will be a conversation happens among the team and they come up with a number, right? Now, in this number, different numbers may be given, but maximum time will be given for this poker gaming is for every user story, maximum 15 minutes. 10 minutes to 15 minutes is the maximum time. Within 15 minutes, they have to come to a conclusion. One number they have to come up with. They have to conclude with one number. So whichever is, for example, there is no commonality among the team. So whichever is the highest number, whoever has given the highest number, that number will be kept aside. Like this, again, the card will be rotated among the people. So whoever has given 3 number, can you expect the same thing will be followed by the person in the next round? Because it depends on the kind of interaction they had with the team. So he may be changing his mind. He or she may be changing his mind. They may not be in 3, right? They may be come up with 5. So, but make sure this meeting has to be concluded and all these people have to conclude about the number only one time, right? Within 15 minutes, they have to come to a conclusion, right? So, but for example, if it was not happened, what will happen? For example, there were 3 rounds of meeting was conducted. Whichever is the highest number we have taken, right? Whatever the number we have taken is the highest number we have got, that number will be allotted for the particular user story. High number, high complexity, low number, low complexity, right? For example, in the first round, we have got 8 is the highest number among all the team, right? So second round, 5 number is the highest. Whereas in the third round, you see the 5 number is the highest one. So what is that we do? Wherever the number we got, it's not 8. Normally we take 8 sometimes, 5 sometimes. Why? Because 2 times we got 5 as a. So we have to see the commonality among the team. That's what we need to see and that is what we need to understand. This is where generally conversation will happen. After that, confirmation means based on that, we see the confirmation and provide a number for each user story. Right? So this is what generally 3C's technique is. Card will be taken, user story will be given to all the people. There will be conversation going on. They have to come up with number. So final number will be given. So, but make sure this number Fibonacci series is what will be taken. Now here is a question, Raj, why don't we take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Okay. So why are we taking Fibonacci series? Because Fibonacci series is an increment. You see, last one is an increment of a Fibonacci series. The reason why we are taking Fibonacci series because the complexity for every user story or the functionality whenever we are working on, complexity sometimes will increases. See, complexity never decrease, right? As long as there is any kind of changes or we are making out of it, automatically complexity will be increased accordingly. That's the reason why Fibonacci series is what we are taking. That to highest number will be taken here accordingly. So what we have to do now, here we have to provide the number story point based on the interaction they had. They have to give the number. Here you can see, here there is an option here, right? So here you can see there is an option you can see. Here you can give the number for this every user story. There will be a number, right? Story point here. So we have to give a number for all the user stories, whatever the user stories we have. So we need to provide a number. So this number I am giving randomly, okay? Don't, because randomly I am giving. Usually in real environment, normally what we do is based on the interaction we had with the team, final number will come up with. But I am giving you the random number here. I am not giving the actual number. Because based on the interaction, the number will be provided usually, okay? Based on the common understanding. But here, as in this training, I am giving a random number. Different numbers we are giving here. So for all the user stories, I'm giving different numbers like 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, right? Depends because highest complexity, highest number, lowest complexity, lowest number. This is how we have to provide. High complexity, high number, low complexity, low number. So I'm giving the numbers for all the user stories. This is one way of doing it. Otherwise, you can divide that into task. Either way, that can be done, or also this also can be done, right? So it depends on the technique what usually team follows, because that is completely depends on the team. It will not be for other one, because team has to decide what complexity we have given for the user stories. Team has to decide that, not by anyone else apart. So team has to decide on this. Team has to decide on the complexity. So why I have given number, I'll tell you, right? So why? Because what number tells you? Because is it number will be converted into number of hours or what, right? So for example, if I'm giving 3 number, what is the reason behind that, right? If I have given 3 number, how can effort will be calculated? On what basis? That I will tell later, okay? Normal calculation is, for example, I'm giving each and every 1 point equal to 4 hours of effort time. That's how generally our calculations are. Because when we are working, usually why are we giving numbers? Because for example, 5 number means how many hours? Usually there will be no number, but internally if you speak, usually what we do the calculation is, for example, every point will be equal into 4 hours of effort. For example, 5 points we are giving, 4 is the minimum hours per 1 point into 4 into 5, 20 hours of time it will be taken. This is the minimum time I am talking about. Sometimes this may get increased, right? Sometimes it may get increased to 4 hours, may get increased to 8 hours also, right? So that is depends on requirement to requirement. This will vary. It will not the same. It will not be the same all the time. This may change. Okay. Now, see, you can see here, we have given all the user stories and all, right? So story points we give is given for all the user stories. So when we have created a roadmap, Apex has created, user stories were created. After user stories, each and every user story will be given some story points. So how many issues we have to see and all everything, that can be selected here. So this is how generally story points we have to give. Right. So once the story points we have given, for example, if you want to create any kind of release, here you have an option for release, wherein we have created already first release already. So in this first release, which are the user stories we are putting on? For example, if you want to add issues and all, you can add the issues. What are the issues we have added? For example, in the first release, what are the issues you want? You can add these things. This I am going to show you in the next session. Right. So this is what the complete user stories, all that is stuff. Okay.